Welcome to spiritualitystepbystep.com. I'm Dan Wigner, and I'd like to talk to you today about the spiritual practice of practicing the presence of God. To find that practice, on my website, spiritualitystepbystep.com, from the main page, you can just click on Spiritual Practices, and there you'll see a list of the practices that are listed and that I have some information for on this website. If you'd like even more information and on additional practices, you can buy my book, Just Begin, a source book of spiritual practices. As I've said in other videos, remember, I'm not giving you all the information you need. I'm just giving you a place to begin to explore and experiment to see what works best with your own spirituality. So we go down here to practicing the presence of God. I'm going to click here and you'll see definition and some background. Now, practicing the presence of God, or the practice of the presence of God, actually does go back to a historical figure, Brother Lawrence, who was a monk in the 16th century. He wrote a little book, tiny little book called The Practice of the Presence of God. And in many ways, it's a meditation on his story. He became a monk with grand visions of contemplating God all day, spending time in prayer, and having the holiest and sweetest union with the divine. And when he got to the monastery, his job was to wash dishes in the kitchen. And that was his job for the rest of his life. Now, rather than being discouraged by that, what Brother Lawrence learned to do was to be always in the presence of God, whether you're washing dishes or in a specific act of prayer. And in many ways, if you've watched my videos or read the material on mindfulness, this is kind of a Christian analog to that, that there's not anything saying that prayer is only at specific times or that God is only present in a church service or a church building. And the practice of the presence of God is a way to try and take that truth seriously. So let's look at the steps. Now, this is a little different than other things I've said before because the practice of the presence of God is really more of an attitude than it is a discrete practice. But I'm giving you a few steps because it's helpful to know where to start rather than just say, do it all the time. So let's, first of all, set aside about 5 minutes. And bear with me, this may seem kind of strange. Pick an activity to stand on one foot without, having anything to balance with. Touch your toes for 5 minutes. Or pat your head while rubbing your stomach. Now try to do any one of those for 5 minutes. And at the end of 5 minutes, I want you to see how common activities can be quite difficult without practice, and how common activities done for longer and longer periods of time than we're used to become very challenging. Practicing the presence of God may sound really easy to just remind yourself, well, yeah, God's there with me wherever I am, whenever I am. But learning to pay attention in that way is actually something that takes a lot of effort and a lot of focus and a lot of intention. So don't expect it to be easy. But one thing I would recommend is as you go through the day, have a short little prayer at different junctures. Remind yourself of what you're trying to do. Brother Lawrence's favorite prayer was something that was like this. Lord of all pots and pans and things, make me a saint by getting meals and washing up the plates. You can adapt this prayer to whatever task you're doing at the time, but to have something pithy like that can help you. You also could take a page out of the centering prayer method and just use a single word to help focus your practice of the presence of God. Maybe use the word here to remind yourself that God, like you, is right here, right now. So this one is going to take there's not much to do as far as getting started, but we can practice this for the rest of our lives and always still be beginners. So let's be excited with the practice of the presence of God to just begin.